Hey Apex Agents, Mobius Y here with another video for Mass Effect Andromeda multiplayer. Today's video should be a fairly short one where I will discuss the age-old topic that is often asked by newer and more inexperienced players in Mass Effect multiplayer. And this is a question that has always been popping up since Mass Effect 3's multiplayer was introduced. And it's the question of, when should I bump up to the higher difficulties? Now, the short answer to this question is simply whenever the heck you're comfortable. It's as simple as that. Of course, the reasoning behind it is a bit more complicated than that. A lot of people seem to think that you need good guns, you need awesome gear, blah blah blah, this, that, and the other thing to really step it up into the harder difficulties, namely on gold difficulty for Mass Effect Andromeda. And this isn't simply the case. People can get by on gold difficulty using something like a Charger 10. You can get by with a weapon such as that. What's more important is your own mental skill set as well as the development of your characters. For example, you can jump into a gold difficulty match with a level 10 or level 12 human vanguard that has about 2 or 3 skills maxed out because you have all of its character cards using only a Charger machine pistol if you're good enough with that character. Of course, you really won't succeed very well on gold if you are routinely charging into things like Ket Fiends or Ascendants and getting sync killed, or charging at Hydras and letting them one-shot kill you with their grab mechanic as well. You simply will not survive for very long on the higher your difficulties if you're constantly doing that. But if you understand the attack patterns of, say, the Hydra mech, for example, it's much easier for you to survive when you're playing a charging melee-centric human vanguard, for example. So it's largely based on your own personal skill set. You can also get by with a low-grade sniper rifle of some kind if you're really precise with your shots. You can get by with a low-grade Vanquisher or even an Ishare, for example, or possibly even a mid to high-grade Widow on something like an Infiltrator, where you are inflicting really high damage every time you cloak and shoot somebody. So it's entirely dependent more so on the character you're playing and how high the level is, as well as your own personal skill set. As I said, you don't necessarily need good gear. You don't always need an N7 Piranha or an N7 Hurricane on a freaking human soldier or something crazy like that. You can get by with more common weapons, I should say, on certain characters that aren't so weapon reliant. Things like the human engineer or the human adept, who are more about debuffing enemies and applying crowd control, or as I said previously, the human vanguard, who can be built for largely power-centric damage as well as utilizing their melee attacks. You can get by with a decent level character in any of those classes. The really important thing is that you want to make sure that you have all the character cards for certain characters. As I have said in the 10 tips for beginners video, make sure you have a couple human characters where you have them up to grade 10 by unlocking all the character cards. And certain human characters, if you are proficient enough with them and do not rely strictly on gun damage, you can take them into gold difficulty with something like a Charger. A mid or high grade Charger is perfectly viable on gold. And you can simply rely largely on power combo damage or your powers themselves, debuffing enemies for your teammates, applying crowd control with things like Singularity, and as I said, possibly utilizing some melee. Now, that doesn't go entirely without saying that everybody can just jump straight into gold using things like Carnifexes and Katanas, which have, garbage DPS, which is something we'll cover in another video sometime in the future, because that will simply result in your team's not going to be able to kill the enemies fast enough, is basically how it is. But if you're using a weapon-centric character, you still want to use something that is decent. But before you are able to really buy those expert packs from completing your first few gold missions, you essentially need to jump into it and get a taste for it using tankier, easier characters that don't have such a heavy reliance on good gear, like the human vanguard. You can still equip a Strength Enhancer grade 1, a Biotic Power Amp grade 1, and throw on a melee booster mod on something like your Predator pistol or even your Charger machine pistol, as I've said numerous times so far, and still go in there and stomp faces, so long as you have things like the Biotic Charge ability and the barrier passive ability all the way kitted out to rank 6 for maximum survivability, and then just continue to increase the different skills as you level up that character in gold difficulty. And then as you start getting a taste for gold difficulty using what might be considered suboptimal gear, each time you successfully extract on gold, you're still earning 50,000 credits roughly, so you should be able to start buying an expert pack almost every game. And as you begin to play on the harder difficulty more frequently, you'll get more comfortable with it, you'll get more familiar with it, you'll just become better adapted at what it takes to be a decent contributing teammate on gold difficulty and be able to survive for, you know, more than 30 seconds, as I said, by charging into a Hydra mech or a Ket Fiend, for example. But once you start buying those expert packs, when you are starting to get your feet wet by playing such characters like the Human Vanguard, like the Human Adept, that aren't so heavily reliant on good guns and doing good gun damage and having good gear so that they can dish out massive amounts of damage with their weapons and stuff like that. Once you start getting your feet wet that way and buying those expert packs, you will start unlocking certain weapons like the Thokin, the Equalizer, the Talon, possibly even some ultra rares like the N7 Hurricane or the N7 Piranha, all of which are extremely gold viable at grade 1 on certain characters, especially weapon-centric characters like Infiltrators and the Human Soldier, so on and so forth. But it still comes down to personal skill. When you're first jumping into the games, you need to be familiar and very adept with the character class that you're playing with, knowing how to survive, knowing how to not get shot down twice every wave, 3 times every wave, so on and so forth. Knowing the good spots on the map where you can run to and hold up and kill off a couple enemies and then just regroup with your team, depending on how you and your friends or possibly your random teammates are playing. It's largely up to your own personal skill as well as your own experience. The more you do it, the more comfortable you will get with doing it as well. It's just human nature. The more we do something, the more complacent we get because we start thinking, oh yeah, I've done this 1,000 times. I'm totally comfortable with it. So it'll start to become second nature the more that you actually play on the gold difficulty. But as I said, it's entirely up to when you are comfortable yourself. You can play certain characters at level 10 or level 12 that you have all the character cards for, as I said, with a mid-grade common weapon of some sort that doesn't suck. And especially if you're playing with friends who are fairly competent and you all can watch each other's backs, or you're all very familiar with certain campy kind of strategies. For example, the very common Firebase Zero against Outlaw, or Firebase Sandstorm, the strategy that I've shown on Firebase Sandstorm previously, then you might have an easier time and you'll be able to bring in some credits a lot sooner than you expected. But in the end, it's entirely when you're more comfortable to it. So there's nothing holding you back. By all means, if you're hesitant to jump into silver or even gold difficulties because you're still playing on bronze, for example, feel free to jump into silver. If you have 1, 2, or especially 3 friends with you, don't be afraid to bump up the difficulty. Give it a try, see how you like it, and you will definitely appreciate the greater amounts of credits that you're hauling in every time you guys successfully extract. So that should just about sum it up for this video. I hope it was informative and gave you guys a better understanding of what you want to be going into the higher difficulties with. It's less of a kind of gear preparation, it's more so of a kind of mental preparation. You want to be prepared to do it yourself. You want to be fairly skilled with the character you're using. If you're using a weapon-centric character, you want to make sure you have a half-decent gun that you've gotten in previous gold missions, for example. If it's not a weapon-centric character, you'll probably have an easier time if you're a newer player, because you can still utilize things like power combos, powers themselves, debuffs, as well as melee characters, for example. So hopefully this helped clear things up for some of you guys. And in the meantime, this has been Mobius. Thanks very much for watching. For more Mass Effect Andromeda multiplayer content, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I try to upload stuff weekly. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter. The link to my Twitter account is in the description below on all my videos that I upload these days. And as always, I will see you on the battlefield. Good luck, Apex.
Needed that.